So I will continue 1587 here, where I left off almost a bit earlier. And we've been talking about the complexity of feelings, understanding how it involves a multitude, what occasion, what circumstance, in what tone of voice, what utterance. It is enormously complicated. And we continue on page 136. And there we before mentioned, you can see an animal angry, frightened, or unhappy, but not hopeful. For that needs language. If, for example, we are to talk of sorrowful behavior, this must include not just how the individual acts, but also the occasion and context of her action. Thus, in comparing the various psychological concepts, one must interpret the word behavior in the broadest of senses. Take the various psychological phenomena: thinking, pain, anger, joy, wish, fear, intention, memory, and compare the behavior corresponding to each. But what does behavior include here? only the play of facial expression and the gestures. Or also the surrounding, so to speak, the occasion of this expression. And if one does include the surrounding as well, how is the behavior to be compared in the case of anger and in that of memory, for example? The key point is the complexity of the inner. Even talk of comparing different types of behavior understates the extent of the differences, for it is as if one were to talk of the different states of water and mean by this its temperature, the speed with which it is flowing, its color, etc. One way of bringing out the differences between the various psychological concepts is by considering the inner content of each. This may seem strange, since we earlier criticized the idea that our psychological concepts are differentiated by their content. The point, however, is to explore the different ways in which the notion of content relates to the different types of concept. The discussion of content is therefore simply one way of bringing out other wider differences. As we saw in chapter 2, the notion of inner content has its clearest application in relation to sense experience. For we tend to think of the content of an experience as the private object, the sense datum, the object that I grasp immediately with the mental eye. The inner picture. But what does talk of a content express? As we have seen, one advantage of the notion of the inner picture is that it captures the subjectivity of sense experience. i.e., it allows us to make a distinction between the individual's account of her visual experience and an account of what actually happened. Furthermore, the notion of a content corresponds to the possibility of the individual offering a continuous account of what she is seeing. This brings out the importance of duration. For one reason, the concept seeing can be said to have a content is that the individual can coherently offer a second-by-second account of it. Do remember that. Here Wittgenstein gives an explanation for our mistake. It is a very, very likable explanation for a duration of essential datum of an outside. By contrast, knowing does not have genuine duration, and so would not normally be said to have an inner content. Although time concepts can be applied to it, they apply in a quite different way. An individual can learn something and later forget it. But knowing something is not an experience she can describe second by second. Most pertinent. It cannot be done as a duration. Furthermore, unlike seeing, it is not interrupted by a break in consciousness, sleep, or by a shift in attention. Similarly, while the individual is aware of her changing sense experience and can signal when a particular change occurs, that is, when she can no longer see such and such a thing, or no longer distinguish such and such a sound. She cannot do the same with respect to her knowledge, for in this case there is no continuous process to be monitored. To mark these differences, Wittgenstein suggests that one might call seeing, hearing, etc. states of consciousness, and knowing, believing, intending, etc. dispositions. The general difference between the two is that one does not need to do a spot check to determine whether the former are continuing. Indeed, if one needed to do a spot check, this itself would show that the state had been interrupted. While we can check that we still know pi to 10 places by saying what the digits are, we do not have to check whether we are still hearing or seeing anything. Furthermore, since sense impressions have genuine duration, we could time each one with a stopwatch. This is just beyond belief. I can almost want to cry. This is exquisite. Furthermore, since sense impressions have genuine duration, we could time each one with a stopwatch. No wonder we believe them to be inner. By contrast, the duration of knowledge and ability or understanding could not be measured in this way. Such tests may seem to focus on a fine distinction, where the real one is enormous. But to this, Wittgenstein replies, this enormous distinction, I would always say, consists in the fact that the two concepts are embedded quite differently in our language game. And the difference to which I called attention was merely a reference to this pervasive distinction. The temptation is simply to treat seeing and knowing as different experiences. What is important, however, is to explore that different grammars, and one way of doing this is to note that seeing has a content in quite a different sense from knowing. So Wittgenstein is here helping us to understand how our misunderstanding can come about. Putting knowing, understanding together with perception, that takes time, will give the idea that knowing is a knowing about something else, and that it has a duration. But here we slowly understand they participate in quite different language games that doesn't have anything directly to do with one another. The difference is acute and telling. But at the same time, without having these minute distinctions here so clearly explained by Johnston, from Wittgenstein the later we would quite surely fall into the trap and putting them together. He's trotting on glass, a very, very thin line. It needs to be done incredibly delicate. Here I terminate 1587b. Wittgenstein, beyond belief, it's just incredible. Thank you very much for your patience. Until next, bye bye.